Italy says it is transferring 49 migrants picked up in the Mediterranean to new processing centres in Albania. Now, it is the third such attempt, which, though, faces hurdles in the courts. The Navy vessel with the migrants on board is expected to reach Albania on Tuesday morning. Italian judges, though, have refused to validate the detention of the first two smaller groups into Albanian centres that were built under a contentious agreement between Rome and Tirana. Well, we're going to cross then live to Rome to talk to our correspondent Seema Gupta, who joins us from there. Seema, explain then how this should work, what this agreement is and what should, in theory, happen with these migrants.
Well, essentially, this agreement between Italy and Albania states that adult males who are in good physical and mental health and who come from a list of countries that the government has determined as safe countries to be repatriated to, they will be, if they're picked up in the Mediterranean, before they reach European Union soil, they'll be transferred to a third country, Albania, where they will be processed there. And then eventually the idea being they will be repatriated to their countries of origin that they have determined, the government has determined as being safe. Now, the government earmarked some 650 million euros over 5 years for these migrant processing centres on Albania. So a huge chunk of money. Human rights groups and NGOs have slammed this agreement, saying that it's cruel, it sends a dangerous precedent, that these migrants are not processed here in Europe, while opposition groups have also added on that it's a really expensive process, not just the money for the migrant processing centres, but even transferring them on these Navy vessels to Albania. Now, the courts, as you mentioned, blocked the first two groups when the first one was set to go back in October. They were eventually returned back to Italy, again at the cost of Italy, because they said that it was difficult to determine what was a safe country. They highlighted a ruling by the European Court of Justice saying that the entire territory of a country has to be determined safe for this repatriation. And so clearly a conflict between the government and the judiciary over this issue.
So tell us a little bit more then, Seema, about why the courts are not happy and what that might mean in this case.
Well, basically, the courts had determined that this was the case, that they couldn't decide, the government couldn't decide what were the safe countries. In the meantime, Meloni essentially moved the jurisdiction of this case from the immigration court in Rome to the Court of Appeals, a move one prosecutor said was simply irrational. And in the meantime, in December, Italy's highest court said that it wasn't for the courts to decide which countries were safe, but it should be government policy. So Ms. Meloni, for her part, her government, her right-wing government, believes that they can now restart that entire policy. The Court of Appeals, meanwhile, is hearing the case, and they've asked the European Court of Justice for clarification on this issue as to what could be safe countries. The European Court of Justice is set to hear this case next month, so we'll perhaps find more. But in the meantime, the government feels that it has the rights to continue. And so now you have these 49 migrants on their way to Albania and expected to reach, as you mentioned, on Tuesday.
Seema, thanks very much. Seema Gupta joining us there live from Rome.